Uh, this is Jack Spillane from the Standard Times, and this is All Politics, and I'm here today with a person who I've known for 20 years, Jennifer White-Smith. I'm here with Jennifer. Is the new head of the national. What's your actual title?
It's superintendent.
Superintendent of the New Bedford Whaling National Historical Park.
That's it. Yeah.
The center of the heart of downtown New Bedford and New Bedford's identity. Many people would argue, and I'm personally pleased with Jen's appointment because you're one of the first, if not the first, superintendent who's a local kid.
Oh, that's absolutely true, and I have to say I wear that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
I am very proud of well, this city, and I'm sure we're going to get into that a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, I walked in the park had just been created in 1996.
Yeah.
And in mid-1997, I was a stay-at-home mom going to school at night at UMass Dartmouth to get my bachelor's degree, and I thought, I was older, I was an older student, and I thought, what am I going to do when I grow up? What do I want to do? And the one thing I knew is that I wanted to do it here in New Bedford. And, you know, I had come up through New Bedford High School, and quite frankly, I was the anomaly. A lot of my classmates couldn't wait to get out of here, and I didn't feel that way. And I thought I'd be in tourism somewhere because I love people and I love selling this place. And so the likely suspects at the time were, you know, the city marketing and tourism department or the Whaling Museum. And then this national park was created, and I thought, wow, what does that mean? And so I showed up on the front steps here at the Visitors Center, and I said, I'd like to come down and do walking tours, and you'll appreciate this. Lucy Bly said, well, hold on there, honey. You don't just jump into walking tours. You got to do a little time at the desk here. I said, I'm excited to do it. And so I started as a volunteer, actually with the city of New Bedford at the time, because the park was not even fully formed. We didn't have a superintendent. Fast forward to early 1998, we got our first superintendent, a good friend and mentor, John Piltzecker, the first superintendent of the park. Yeah, of course you do. And he asked if we city volunteers wanted to become national park volunteers, and our first question was, well, do we get to wear like a cool shirt or something? And he said, you do, you get, you know. And so I started as a volunteer many moons ago, and I think, you know, the park was so new, and there were just three of us. It was John, and Mike Caldwell was here from Lowell on a detail. Mike went on to become the regional director of the Northeast region. John is now at the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island. And me, it was the three of us. And we built this park pretty much from the ground up. There was really nowhere to go but up. And we created positions, and I and many others applied for them. And I was here at that point until about 2008, when I went over to Providence for a little while.
Right. The Providence Monument was...
So, Roger Williams National Memorial.
Right.
And it was just after we had cut the ribbon here on the Corson building. And I sort of looked around and I thought, you know, as much as I love this place and love what we're doing, I think I personally, professionally, I felt like I had hit the ceiling a little bit, in that, not necessarily moving up and getting promoted, more like we had done a lot of work, and I was looking for new adventures. I didn't want to go far. I appreciate that people spend their careers traveling the Park Service and moving up and moving around, and what a wonderful adventure. But again, my adventure was going to be here, if I could make that happen. And so I also wanted, I think the place needed new energy, new ideas. And so I took a position at Roger Williams National Memorial in 2008 as the site manager, and completely undefined. And what it turned out to be was this jack of all trades. And I learned a lot there. Yeah. And the difference really was that I like to think that here in New Bedford, the national park is a big fish in a little pond. Providence is interesting in that Roger Williams National Memorial is this little fish in a big pond. And we were really but really working hard during my time there to create an identity for the park and reach out more into the community there.
For those of you who don't know, Roger Williams is the founder of Rhode Island.
Oh yeah, everything's called Roger Williams.
The Baptist minister who was chased out of Boston and was it Boston or Plymouth? I always get confused.
No, Boston.
Boston.
Yes, he was in Salem.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah, just a real quick about Roger Williams National Memorial. Small site, not to be confused with the Park and Zoo, Roger Williams Park and Zoo. This small site is at the base of Smith Hill. And I would argue one of the most relevant and the biggest stories right now in the National Park Service. When you think about individual rights and separation of church and state and separation of powers and women's rights and Native Americans' rights, that's what Roger Williams was talking about in 1636. So we had a good time.
Now, is that still under your domain?
So it's been complicated, but the quick version is fast forward to 2014. A new superintendent, Megan Kish, came to New Bedford from California. She was to be the superintendent over New Bedford and Roger Williams. They were going to bring them together into this one superintendent. 6 months later, a new park was created in the Blackstone River Valley. And they said, so Megan, why don't you take this one too? Yeah. And she looked around and said, I've got some really wonderful people that work at these 3 sites. Let's create this 3-park model. Okay. And so Megan worked really hard over her 4 years here to pull together these 3 parks, create a shared resource structure, shared staff, that kind of thing. Yeah. Pulled me in as her management assistant. I think she looked around and said she knows a little bit about these places and would be valuable. I appreciated that nod, if you will, and a nod of confidence in me. And we built a really great team and a great 3-park model over the last 4 years. Megan left a year ago in 2018 to take another position with the Park Service in Arizona. And I stepped into the acting interim role over the 3 parks. And during that period, we did an assessment, whether that was the right way to continue. And the regional directorate said, we don't think so. And we think that the parks are in a good place where we can now pull them apart. Okay. And so I am now the permanent superintendent, I say that incredibly proudly, of New Bedford Whaling National Historical Park. Blackstone and Roger Williams are still together, and the search for a new permanent superintendent for those sites is underway. All right.
So back to New Bedford.
Yes.
1996.
Yeah.
We're now 23 years later. Yeah. How has New Bedford Whaling National Historical Park changed in that time?
It's interesting. I mean, when I look around, and I'm looking right now out these windows at this beautiful view, maybe Jack will show it to you before we finish, but physically it hasn't changed a lot, and that's our job, right, is to preserve and protect the historic resources. So the fact that it hasn't changed a lot in terms of the landscape is a great thing. That said, it's an incredibly dynamic community, and I think that we are very collaborative. I remember in the early days of the park, it was, you know, the Whaling Museum and the Roach Jones Stuff House and Garden Museum and the Port Society managing the Seamen's Bethel and the Mariners Home. And we were all doing great work, but we were doing it separately. And so I like to think the park came in and sort of brought everybody together under this umbrella of collaboration and partnership. I don't like to say that we rode in on the white horse and we fixed everything. That's not what I'm trying to say. I just, this park was born into partnerships. It was one of the first, Lowell was really one of the first, if not the first, certainly in the Northeast region, urban partnership parks. New Bedford followed that model. We were born into partnerships and collaboration. It's all we knew. It's all we knew how to operate and work. And I think we've built on that.
For those of you who might not know, the New Bedford Park has all these historical buildings. People who are from the city know this, but the park is right in the businesses, so it's all mixed together. And to me, the heart of the national park has always been the wonderful tours that you give when you walk people around and show them the significant points of the whaling industry and the history. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, just to make sure folks understand, federal ownership is minimal. We only own the Visitor Center, which many of you will know as the downtown, the historic branch of the New Bedford Institution for Savings. In 2008, we opened the Corson Building as an education center. Those are the only two buildings we own as the National Park Service. Everything else in the park, which is a 34-acre, 13-block local historic district, is privately owned by the city. And we work, again, in partnership with the property owners, the nonprofit organizations, the other government entities. We have, I could talk about the staff and what we're doing all day long, but I'll keep it brief.
What are some of the big points on the tour?
Yeah. So primarily we're talking 19th century whaling. Yeah. And when you say that to people, they go, oh, you know, I love whales. Well, we love whales too. Yeah. So we're not necessarily, we certainly talk about what it was like aboard whale ships and what that culture was like. And there's certainly an economic piece with that we talk about. There's certainly a global reach that we talk about. I mean, these whalemen were some of the early explorers, some of the early map makers. And so we certainly talk about that, but what we mostly focus on here at the park is the shoreside piece, the shoreside industries, the Coopers, the cask, they're the Coopers, you know, all the folks that outfitted these whale ships. Where were those places? And the challenge is those places aren't here anymore. So it takes a real interpreter, a super talented person to stand before a group of folks who maybe don't know the history and really create the picture, right? And make you feel like you're standing in this bustling 19th century seaport.
I think the signboards that you, I think about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, that you put in have really helped a lot to sort of help people reimagine that time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. That was one of our early and really important projects. The Visitor Center is only open 9 to 5. Yeah. We are open late on like AHA nights and in the summer some nights, but people come 24/7 to the city. They're wandering around, and so we have a network of, I think it's over 40, 30-ish, what we call interpretive panels, and they are throughout the downtown, right? Signboards, interpretive panels. And yeah, they help us tell the story when maybe you don't have a park ranger or a volunteer to lead you and guide you. We also talk about the Underground Railroad, completely integrated into the whaling story. New Bedford was an end point, if you will, of the Underground Railroad. We had a very large, one of the largest in the country, free black populations here.
Yeah. Many of them whalers.
Oh, sure. I mean, whaling, I love to say that a whale ship was the great equalizer. You showed up, you wanted to work, they didn't care what color you were. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't a hierarchy, and I'm not going to say that there wasn't racism. Sure. And classism and all those things that unfortunately still exist in our world today. But you could find work here, and you could feel safe here. I think that's the most important thing. There was a community of people here, free blacks and Quakers and others, who ensured that this remained a free and open community for these folks to be here. And that's an aspect of the history that I'm just incredibly proud of.
With the Whaling Museum putting out the Park Coffee Park and the plans for the Frederick Douglass Park up the hill, it just seems like there's more and more things for you guys to show people and interpret. And
I have a personal, it's like a personal goal. I came up through this school system here in New Bedford. We were forced to read Moby Dick in 10th grade, which I think is a travesty. You know, you're 15 years old, how do you get through that? I didn't realize that Moby Dick opens up here in New Bedford. I read the book, I got through it, I probably passed the test or not, but my point is what a travesty to get out of New Bedford High School and not realize that the first 13 chapters of this great American novel took place right here. Same with Frederick Douglass. I didn't know until I started working here at the park. I was 33 years old. That Frederick Douglass's first free home was here in New Bedford. So personally, it's my goal to make sure as many people know that is possible, particularly those who are from here. You know, that sense of pride.
It seems like it's important to know who we are as a people, and that we come from these noble roots and this history.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not alone with this goal. I work with an incredible team of people here who are just so passionate and smart and invested and want to make sure that we're working to instill this pride in our local community and helping the folks who come in from the outside really understand this great, important American story.
Over the past 23 years, the National Park has really become one of the key players in, I would call, for lack of a better word, the economic development of the tourism industry in downtown New Bedford. So it's not just, oh, the park is here, isn't that nice? It's the park, the Whaling Museum, the different organizations. How do people who work here feel about New Bedford and their role?
Yeah, I like to think that we are part of that economic engine here. We don't charge people per se to walk in the door or take a tour, but we are part of this large network across the country and in territories, as you know, 419 National Park Service units now. We are one of those. People love the National Park Service. They love the park system. There are people that retire, and this is my goal, and they drive around the country and visit parks. Those people are spending dollars in our restaurants, admission to our museums, and so yes, there's a ripple effect. Another one of my goals is that everybody in this city, I don't care if you're a resident, a business, a nonprofit, museum, is using the tagline, you know, home of New Bedford Whaling National Historical Park. I'd like to think it's some cachet. It's 419 parks in this country, and we have one here. I think that's an incredibly important thing to remember, and for folks to take advantage of. Tap into that.
Absolutely.
You know. So
now you're here, the first local gal to be superintendent. What can we expect what's next for the national park? What sort of issues are you working on, or what's your agenda?
Community engagement. We really are looking to just ramp up our role here and reconnect. There's a lot of there's been change in leadership here in the city in terms of the nonprofits. There's a fairly new director at the Whaling Museum. I just met with Don Salerno, the fairly new director at the Roach Jones Duff House. There are a lot of new people around, a lot of new energy. There's it's not new, Jack, and you know this. There is this emerging, internationally recognized art scene here in New Bedford. One of the things that we get to talk about is the culture of whaling, and one of the aspects of the culture of the 19th century here in New Bedford was art. We had so much money coming into the city that folks like the Arnolds, the Roaches, the Rodmans, they were art patrons of a level that we would say the Rockefellers were at. The only reason that Audubon came through to sell his elephant folios of the birds of America because he knew there was money here. We want to better engage with this art community here. We shouldn't be the only ones telling the story by guiding people around. Let's engage with the art community and have artists tell the story of whaling and the Underground Railroad and slavery and the economics. We don't have to tell the whole story.
And there's a long history of a vibrant arts community in New Bedford.
And there's some real funky stuff going on here right now. I mean, AHA is really the centerpiece of it, and the Arts and Culture Night every month. But we're a lot more than that now. We have DATMA, Design Art Technology of Massachusetts is here. They're proposing a huge public art installation for this summer at Custom House Square. There's, the mills on either side of the park. Maybe not in the park, but gosh, the stuff that's going on down at Kilburn right now, and Hatch Studios, and we want to connect with those folks. And so that's part of the next couple of years is trying to figure out how to partner with, empower, collaborate with other circles of folks that maybe we haven't been engaging with.
How does that work? Because you do have a mission as the whaling industry.
Yeah.
But you know, the artists, the textile industry, the glass industry, the abolition movement in New Bedford. How does all that connect?
No, it's a great question. Each park has enabling legislation that creates it.
Yeah.
From that enabling legislation, through planning processes, the parks create interpretive themes. The interpretive themes can go both ways. They allow us to do things, like if someone proposes an idea, we have this lens that we think about this idea through. Does it support one or more of these themes? Does it support our enabling legislation? So it allows us to both say, that's awesome, let's do it, or wow, that's way out there, that's not us. I'd like to say I've done pretty well in my career by being a risk taker, by pushing the envelope a little bit.
Me too.
That's why you and I really like each other. I know what the themes are, I know what the parameters are, and I just sort of go like this. And even better than that, the team is on board with that. And they're also risk takers and folks who want to be creative. And so I don't even know at this point if one of our interpretive themes speaks to community, but come on, look out the window. That's what we are. We are, as you said it, we are embedded in this community. Yeah. So anything we do that supports what's going out in the community, or that community is asking for, we should respond to that.
Before we wrap up, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't just touch on your own personal journey. And not that I want to make a bigger deal out of that, but it's also an inspiration to many people, and was when you were going through it. Can you talk just a little bit about that? Yeah,
I just got goosebumps. So first of all, I'm feeling great, and I was diagnosed with leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia, in August of 2017. As these things are, it was complete shock. Yeah. You're going through your life. You might not be feeling great, but you can. This is my point for folks is, if you can't explain away something legitimately, go get it checked. And so that's my message. I put off my regular blood work by a couple of months. I felt guilty about that for a little while. I had some things going on that I'm tired, I'm working a lot. And the diagnosis came in August, and I embarked on a battle. I don't even use the word journey. I call it a battle.
And the interesting thing, and I'll say this, and I don't usually say it, I've had cancer myself. I had prostate cancer
Jack.
7 years ago, and people are different. And I had a very, I'm great now. My doctor doesn't use the word cancer free, but I'm good. I'm feeling
good.
Well, but it was a very private thing for me. In fact, I don't think I've ever talked about it before.
Thank you.
But your journey was very public. You documented everything from your visits to the hospital to your
that was really
treatment. I was very much in admiration of you, because when you're going through something like that, you don't know how it's going to go. No. And so to be so open, how were you able to do that?
It was, so in the beginning, it was 100% self-serving. I'm going to be honest. I needed to get it out. And I did, you're right, from minutes, within minutes of my diagnosis, I was very public on my Facebook page about what was going on. It very quickly turned from self-serving to really a hope that it would be inspirational and educational for somebody. I figured if one person was reading this stuff and went to the doctor to check on something they weren't sure about, reached out to somebody else that they knew that was sick, I thought that's a win. And it really, I just feel like we created such a community. And I could not have, I might have gone into remission anyway, because it turns out a lot of that stuff with this anyway is genetic, so it's a crapshoot. But I don't think I would be as complete and whole and I don't know what the other word is, as I am right now, if I hadn't had that community behind me and under me and with me. This city is incredible. The people are incredible. I had strangers reach out to me. I had strangers leaving food on my porch. I had friends from grammar school from across the country reach out and just offer support. My family and I are just incredibly grateful. And
does it color your attitude toward life and being in this position after that?
It does. It does. I'll be honest with you. Pretty quickly after diagnosis and really learning how serious this illness is, I thought, if I make it out of this, I'm not going back to work. If I make it out of this, I'm going to just go live my life. I'm going to hang with my dogs and my husband and my grown kids and my grandkids, and we're going to travel. And it was really interesting. And then I got to a point in my illness where we did some genetic testing, and it came back that it was likely that I was going to beat this. And then, as I was undergoing pretty intensive chemotherapy, and I had this knowledge that there was a good chance, and the odds were increasing, that because of my genetics I would be okay and I'd go into remission, and more importantly stay in remission. And they know that stuff now. I applied for, it was really interesting, and I'll make it quick. I was a management assistant over these 3 parks with Megan, the superintendent. That's a sort of innocuous, nebulous position, catch-all. What we really wanted was a deputy superintendent position. Gave it a little more authority, a little more there. We had put out a request to fill that position a year before I was diagnosed, and it was just taking a while to get the permission to fill it from Washington. Halfway through my treatment, Megan called me and she said, "So, we've got approved to fill the deputy position. What do you want to do?" I could fly it, we could wait, and I said, "You know what, you fly that. You fly it, I'm applying."
Right.
And I literally was sitting in my hospital room in Rhode Island Hospital when my oncologist came in, and I had my laptop, and I got this crazy stuff going into and through my body, and I'm like, I'm doing my resume, I'm doing the application. And I thought, if I'm going to be given this reprieve in life, I'm going to take it, grab it, and run with it. And so I came back to work a year ago after getting the green light. It was the end of February, and within a couple weeks I was named the deputy. And then 6 weeks after that, the interim superintendent. And it was perfect. It was perfect, because I didn't get to sit around and worry and dwell on what had just happened. It forced me to just look forward, and I still do that. That's what I'm doing.
So there you go, a personal journey of Jennifer Smith, the new superintendent of the Wheeling National Historical Park. As I said, she's the first locally homegrown superintendent. She knows New Bedford better than as well as anybody in town. We're lucky to have her.
I appreciate it. And you can do it. Whatever it is you want to do, don't doubt that.